All right, welcome back to the third DWC Organizational. Sorry for the delay, everyone. We had a disconnect and I had to do a quick fix for the last match. Ended up, Little X took down the match 2-1. So we have our top 8 all wrapped up. Let's hop over to the screen here. Coming in, first seed, we have our feature from last round, Unversed, Little X. Coming in, Bant mid-range, first seed in the top 8. Followed by second place, Sterling, Blue-Red Flash. Third place, Ugly Red, playing Jund Food. Fourth place, Brick Figures on Jund Food. Then our opponent from the final round, Hot X, coming in with Esper Doom Foretold in fifth place. Professor Chaos coming in at sixth. Looks like they are playing Simic Flash. Silver Coat, seventh place. See this deck here? It looks like another Bant mid-range deck.
Hello, Stream. I've been in the other room organizing.
Welcome, Cam. And then rounding out the top 8 in eighth place, our one copy of Teamer Clover. It's been a great event so far. We're just getting ready for the top 8 match. So, I mean, this was an exciting tournament. We saw Unversed, Lil X sweep the tables, or 1-6-0 after Swiss, Bant mid-range.
Yeah, just crushing people.
Mm-hmm. I mean, did you catch that match from the other room?
Yeah, I've caught bits and pieces of matches when I had a chance to watch stream. So it's kind of confusing for me because I could like hear you guys speaking here, and then I was watching stream like 5 minutes behind what I heard from the other room. But I caught a bit of the games.
Yeah, really exciting games. Excited to get into the top 8 here. We'll line up a feature match. Let's see what we got going on here. We'll hop over to casters.
Yeah, so I actually didn't get a chance to look at the metagame breakdown, but you had one done earlier, right? That you've been discussing. Do you have it on paper?
Mm-hmm. So this is our metagame breakdown here. 40 players in the field, 11 decks in the field with one copy, 18 different decks.
That's exciting.
In our tournament. Most played deck, mono red, 0 copies in the top 8.
Ooh.
Not a great showing for mono red.
Although I did hear, noted mono red player P Sams was complaining about this in chat in between rounds, that there were some mono red team kills early on in the tournament. So that's going to keep their numbers out of top 8.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, second most played deck in the field, Teamer Clover, 15%, 6 copies, 1 copy making it into top 8.
Okay.
We have Jund Food, Blue-White Control, and Bant Midrange all tied for third place. 10% of the field, 4 copies each. 1 copy of Bant Midrange, undefeated after Swiss. 2 copies of Jund Food making it into the top 8.
Wow. So, yeah, those decks have been doing well.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the highest conversion rate? Is Jund Food?
Well, if you count the 1 copy of Blue-Red Flash and the 1 copy of Simic Flash and the 1 copy of Esper Doom Foretold with 100% top 8 conversion rates.
That's pretty high.
So not really going to beat those ones.
I'm surprised that Flash decks manage to convert so well, considering that you just mentioned like a lot of Teferi lists being pretty common. But yeah, I mean, if I had to pick some favorite decks at the start of this event, I don't think I would have picked the Flash decks, but. Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, it looks like both of them ran the tables here. Let's look. The Flash decks both finishing 4-2. One of them finishing 5-1, the other one finishing 4-2.
Sweet. Yeah. This makes sense. We had a nice showing of some atypical decks, and then the 10% that we were talking about were sort of decks known in standard. Mm-hmm. No blue-whites made top 8, right? No straight blue-white control?
No blue-white controls.
Yeah, this was actually something that we had been mentioning on the show recently, that I think I even overheard Adam saying he was talking to me about, that like blue-white's good, but you can kind of get all the strength of blue-white and also splash a color to diversify your game plan, which is what we're seeing from these Bant lists. And one of them just stomped everybody. Ooh, my name is wrong on stream here. I'm not Adam Ben, despite the name tag.
Let me change that for you.
Gotta be accurate here. Perfect, thank you. All right. So yeah, top 8 pairings had been posted as of a little while ago. I believe the players are just finding themselves and sorting everything out.
Mm-hmm.
Who are we going to be featuring for the first quarters?
For the quarterfinals, we're going to feature Brick Fingers on Jun Food versus Hot X on Esper Doom Foretold.
Now that's a interesting matchup because they are both doing different sacrifice things. And so like Esper Doom Foretold making Jun Food sacrifice things. I don't know if Jun Food actually cares about that.
Yeah, it's gonna be an interesting match. One of the more interesting ones, which is why I chose it.
Awesome.
It's gonna be a good one.
I am excited for it. We're in. All right. So we're hearing from Brick Fingers, whose point of view we're gonna have.
Mm-hmm.
That the game is starting. So we'll pull it up on screen share here shortly.
All right, we're right into the action.
All right, turns 1 and 2 of game 1 of this quarterfinal match. This hand looks very nice from Jun Food. You've got a Brontodon to deal with any of the like random enchantments or Doom Foretolds that your opponent might play.
Mm-hmm.
You have Cat into Oven. This Pelucranos is going to start smashing.
Yeah, not a bad start for Brick Fingers on this one. Birth of Meliodas, turn 2 play for Hot X. Gonna get planes out of their deck. And now, really, if you're Brick Fingers, you got to close out this game.
Yeah, you're just looking to push damage before they make you sack your engine permanents. Like if you ever have to sack a Witch's Oven to a Doom Foretold or like a Trail of Crumbs to a Doom Foretold, then you've lost something that you can't really bring back. Because those are things that you don't actually want to sacrifice.
Exactly, yeah. You just need to establish a quick clock. Want to find a Mayhem Devil or something like that so you can start making more effect of your Witch's Oven sacrifices. Ooh, Elspeth's Nightmare coming down.
Yeah, I mean, just hitting Cat, which you can sacrifice anyway.
Unlock the door.
What's the lock? Oh, sorry. We didn't do the giveaway. We didn't do what? We didn't do the giveaways. Okay. Sorry, Adam kind of tried to come and tell us something, and I had accidentally locked him out. Yeah, I think this Brontodon is going to be the star of the game. Like, it's currently can't get past this 0-4, but it's making the Cauldron Familiar get through. And it's just going to hang around here until there's the perfect enchantment to remove. And I think critically, because this Doom Foretold deck relies on things like Elspeth's Nightmare and things like Oath of Kaya as its removal, the 4 toughness and the 3 power on this Brontodon really make things awkward. Ooh. Shatter the Sky, though, pretty good at cleaning this up. Gets rid of the Brontodon when there was no mana left open. And we have to be careful here that this Elspeth's Nightmare is about to pop, and we don't want any of these things stuck in our graveyard. The cat will be able to come back. We have enough food hanging around, but we're going to lose this Pelucranos. All right. Corvold on turn 5. Again, just like exactly what Jun Food wants. I don't know if they have anything better than this. Maybe a Corvold on turn 4 off of a Goose is better, but the reason to play Jun Food over, I think, any other deck is Corvold. Just every single time you activate any one of your cards and you have a Corvold in play, you just start burning your opponent in cards and stats, and it's nuts. So hopefully Hot X has something. Oh, Elspeth Conquers Death is maybe one of the most perfect answers.
Also, if you're in chat right now, we've started the raffle for our first arena code giveaway. Just hit ! Raffle to enter. There'll be, from the moment you hear this, will be 5 minutes before entries end, and then the winner will be chosen. I'm giving away arena codes for sleeves courtesy of wizardtower.com, sponsor this podcast and sponsor this event.
Yeah, a lot of things here are courtesy of wizardtower.com. ! Raffle. But yeah, Elspeth Conquers Death. One of the cleaner answers to Corvold. Stops it from running away. Like if Hot X hadn't had an answer on that turn, then there would have been 2 or 3 things sacrificed plus an attack, and that Corvold would have been hitting for 9, 10, and this would be a very different game.
Yep. All right, Thirst for Meaning. 3 cards to the hand for Hot X. Let's see what happens here. Teferi, Fabled Passage hit the bin.
No enchantment to discard is probably rare in this deck, especially game 1 when you have like all your Omen of the Seas, all your Oath of Kayas. Interesting. I assume you guys have seen the combo happen on stream of using Thirst for Meaning while you have a Dream Trawler out to give it +3/+0.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another sweet option.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Brickfinger's holding on to half of the Splinter Twin combo. God Eternal Bontu, Mayhem Devil. We've seen him close out 2 or 3 games actually today with that exact combo. Looks like he's not going to wait for the Mayhem Devil, just going to go for the value now. Cast the God Eternal Bontu, draw some cards, reload.
I think this is required. Based on what you were saying, that the Jund deck has to kind of be the quicker deck in this matchup, that if allowed to wait around, the Doom Foretold deck is going to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
That you can't just wait and hope that you draw a Mayhem Devil here. Like, if you need to use this Bontu to cycle some of your arguably too many lands, some of your extra food into extra resources, because like a Goose and a Cauldron Familiar probably isn't going to do it in time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Plus, it's just a 5/6. Like, unless you get Shatter the Sky here, you have like a Goose and some extra cats to sacrifice. Like, you could just attack for 5 twice.
Yeah, funny enough, if there is a Shatter the Sky from Hot X, you could sacrifice the Bontu to the Witch's Oven, make 2 foods, and then bring back both your cats immediately on the end step.
Yeah, and then just keep attacking for 2.
Mm-hmm.
The Menace on Bontu also gets around any Dream Trawlers that try and be undefensive. There are Dream Trawlers in Hot X deck, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Teferi's going to down tick on God Eternal Bontu, prompting a sacrifice with the Witch's Oven. Putting Bontu back 2 cards from the top.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you want to be able to use Bontu's trigger again and you want it back in your hand, this way you still get it back in your hand eventually while it cuts your opponent off of drawing a card off of Teferi's Minus. It fizzles the ability. So, And as you mentioned, there's 2 food here now. So if we get shattered, our cats come back. There's been no scrying. Dance of the Manse, though, the big powerhouse from the Esper Doom Foretold deck. It's kind of what Esper Doom Foretold lists have been doing for a while with various eggs, but now more enchantment based with sagas and Omen of the Sea. And in that last match, the Bant deck had Shatter the Skies in order to clear the board after all these 4/4s and stuff showed up. So future Dance of the Manse here are not going to be nearly so easy for a deck like Jund Food to answer.
Yep. All right, just a bunch of lands in hand for Brickfingers, though. Not much else going on.
This is a hard decision. Yeah. Do you attack the Teferi or do you hope that 7 is low enough? And I feel like with the fact that there's a Birth of Meletus here, you got to go after that Teferi. Because if it goes to 3, you're never killing it, especially past this wall. And then you're just going to get instant speed Danced. You're going to get instant speed Wrathed. Like, I feel like that might have been a critical error.
Well, we'll see how it works out for Brickfingers. We still know the card underneath that top card is the Bontu.
Because this was always an error. Like in the past, when Teferi 5 was around in Standard, people would think like, I can race it. No, you never could.
Yeah, a little bit different of a ball game now. This Teferi a lot less punishing if you leave it alone, but still very relevant.
Yeah, definitely less punishing than Teferi 5, but I feel like I would suspect, and I'm going to be curious to see if this Teferi ever leaves the battlefield for the rest of this game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess it could get pinged out if we draw into like some Mayhem Devils and Brickfingers finds more of his engine, but with just another land off the top, this isn't looking good. That Bontu drew a bunch of lands initially. We've continued to draw lands since, and we're back at the Bontu hoping to see if we can draw some non-lands. So one of these decks much happier with the amount of mana they have than the other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Although, not many enchantments in the graveyard for any future Dance of the Manse. However, the sagas are about to pop, and we can always sack this Omen of the Sea.
All right, there's that instant speed Shatter the Sky.
Wouldn't have been an issue had the Teferi been gone, but now it's something we have to consider for our attacks and how we deploy our hand.
Yep.
Though, as you mentioned, the food are here, so these Cauldron Familiars will be coming back. And it's very important, I think, especially when playing against a card like Elspeth Nightmare, to not I mean, in this scenario, there's not really anything else that you would want to sacrifice these food for. But maybe in future games, if there's something like a Trail of Crumbs on the field, oftentimes we'll see players sacrifice food just to gain 3 so that they can pay the additional 1 and activate Trail of Crumbs. But if you do that a bit too aggressively and you don't have food left over and they kill your cats and then an Elspeth Nightmares pop, you lose much of the power of your deck. So that's something we'll have to see if Brickfingers watches out for. Here, though, able to sacrifice the food and bring the cats back to save them. With still plenty of food left over, which I imagine Bontu is going to eat.
Yeah, you have a lot of excess lands at the moment, a bunch of excess food. Well, this Bontu is going to do work into restocking Brickfinger's hand, hopefully finding some way to close out this game.
Mm-hmm. I wonder how aggressively you sacrifice things here, because with 2 Cauldron Familiars, 3 food, and a Witch's Oven, I feel like you could sack... Like, you have enough lands that you could definitely sack all of the lands that you tap to cast Bontu. You want to leave yourself with enough mana so that if you draw into a Mayhem Devil, you can just ping them out. But from 6, you don't need many other pieces to kill them here. So,
yep.
Assuming no interaction from our opponent, I feel like this Bontu is going to be sacking quite a bit, because if it doesn't find anything, we lose.
Interesting split here, opting to go 1 cat at the Teferi to knock it down to 3.
That I am not sure I understand. Any thoughts on that attack?
I guess you just don't want the Teferi stick to have a free minus on this Bontu.
Yeah, I guess you're still... Yeah, I suppose, but I feel like you understand that your opponent has enough resources that this Bontu isn't what's going to be pushing the last damage. It's triggers off cats and Mayhem Devils and Witches Ovens. And if you're trying to ping them out here at this point, based off the cards you draw, then having them at 4 is much better than having them at 5. But we'll see. Maybe this game goes longer than I'm expecting, and losing this Teferi, well, proves me wrong about it never leaving, but maybe that allows Brickfingers to maintain enough resources here.
All right, that's 5 permanents sacked for Brickfingers. Ooh, that second Witch's Oven.
Second Witch's Oven here is...
He might regret sending that Cauldron Cat at the Teferi.
Because we now have 4 points of damage here. If we brought back both cats, sacked them both, brought them back again, that's 4.
Yeah.
But this Teferi's at 3 instead. So we're a point short here as it stands. We don't have enough to cast Corvold to get an additional sacrifice. Yeah, I feel like we're just a point short. Hopefully we can untap and finish things off next turn. But as it stands, that attack is seeming to haunt Brickfingers.
All right, Thrashing Brontodon for Brickfingers.
This one is good for the same reasons that the other one was good, because they have the same text on them. That one's actually even better, because now there's a mana open, whereas last time we had tapped out for something when it died.
This is what the people are here for, the expert commentary. Ooh, that's a Dance of the Manse. X equals 7 at instant speed.
Yeah, so like this wouldn't have happened had the Teferi died. Our opponent...
Well, this wouldn't have happened if Brickfingers had attacked his opponent's face instead of the Teferi also.
I mean, okay, there is a narrow line where... So, like, Hot X has had this at the ready this entire turn and waited until now. There is a narrow line where maybe if both cats go at Hot X's face, they do this in combat and block them to save the damage. But I feel like you would do that anyway if that was your plan. So, yeah, this is all not great for Brickfingers.
No.
Luckily, though, we have these cats that we can chump with. Our opponents are only at 5, so we only need a couple turns of cycling these cats. And while we do so, we can stop these 4/4s from hitting us. None of them have trample. None of them have any form of evasion.
Yeah, Hot X really looking for something like Oath of Kaya right now to be able to play, then pick up again with their Teferi to gain 6 life, to put themselves out of these range of these cats killing him.
Because these 4/4s, I mean, really only one's getting through, if that. Well, I mean, if you attack with all of them, probably only one gets through. And with Brickfingers being at 22, that takes a while. All right, here we see the power of Thrashing Bronodon having a mana open. I bet it blows up this Elspeth Conquers Death, but I mean, there's two of them. Which one do you go after?
I imagine you go after the 4/4 one, the one that's going to pop off next turn.
Yeah. I like this, going after the thing that'll gain your opponent some life while you're trying to ping them out. Also
reasonable.
Because I think there's only Teferis that Elspeth Conquers Death can bring back, right? There's no Dream Tollers that have been seen in this game, so I mean, they already have a Teferi.
All right, absolutely. Oh, there's an Oath of Kaya. This game isn't over yet.
This may have been sort of the narrow sequence of turns that Hot X had to step through in order to get to the rest of this game. So luckily for Brickfingers, this Elspeth Nightmare is going to kill itself because despite being a 4/4, Saga's still sacrifice. And same with the Elspeth Conquers Death. So 2 of these 4/4s are temporary. Just have to make sure that we don't accidentally get our Cauldron Familiars exiled, but I don't think that's going to be an issue.
Yeah, I imagine they're going to come back into play at the end of this turn so they can attack.
Mm-hmm. Actually, with an extra food and a sacrifice from Corvold resolving, is that enough damage? All right, so we attack both Cauldron Familiars at Hot X. They block. They go to 3. We sack. We bring them back. That's 2. We play Corvold, sack 1, bring it back with our extra food. That's 4.
Yeah, you could do it with the Massacre Girl as well.
Also true.
Yep, so it looks like that...
They should be lethal here as long as Brickfinger sees it. Does he see it? You'd have to sack these cats with the trigger on the stack, right?
No, you have to let the first trigger resolve.
I guess you can sack the Massacre Girl for the food.
Yep.
But where's the... No, he missed it. We only have 2 damage. You had to bring one back with a Massacre Girl trigger on the stack because there was an extra food, but now...
Well, no, you put both Cauldron Familiars in the bin. You sacrificed the Mayhem Devil.
I see. Yeah. I forgot that these Witch's Ovens weren't used.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm wrong. I missed it. Brickfingers has been piloting this deck expertly all day. Clearly, I should have deferred to his understanding.
Yeah, it looks like that split attack doesn't come back to bite Brickfingers. Still squeaks out the win there. Go up 1-0 versus Hot X in our quarterfinal match of the DWC Organizational. Number 3.
Those cats, man. Probably the smallest things to ever kill so many opponents.
So what do you like out of the sideboard here for Brickfingers?
I feel like the duress, like the hand disruption is going to be great because you're sort of... the scary win con that you're concerned about is Dance of the Manse, which, by the way it functions, has to hang around in their hand for a while. Noxious Grass may be a consideration to pick off Teferi. Shifting Ceratops, while normally kind of in your mind is a card for control, this is really a black-white control deck with some blue cards rather than a blue-based control deck, so I'm not sure they'll have as much of an issue dealing with something like that. So I don't know if that's going to be brought in here. This... yeah, so maybe Brickfingers likes it in this matchup, maybe not. Liliana is kind of the huge powerhouse thing you want. The problem, though, is that it's not very sticky against opposing Doom Foretolds because she only makes tokens. If they just Doom Foretold you, you don't have the option of sacking the zombies. You just lose your Liliana eventually, so I expect that will stay in the sideboard. Yeah, I feel like your graveyard-based pinging strategy is your best way to go about this because it's resilient to Wraths, it's resilient to Doom Foretold. So I suspect that maybe not much changes, but...
Yeah, it looks like the sideboard for Hot X is 3 Agonizing Remorse, 4 Thought Erasure, 2 Noxious Grasp, 2 Thought Distortion, 2 D-Spark, and 2 Devout Decree. Like the Devout Decrees, Agonizing Remorse is an interesting one. I think if you want to go the discard plan, that's the one you're going to want. I don't like bringing in all 7 discard spells, though.
Yeah, Agonizing Remorse more flexible. the Jun Fu deck can be known to dump its hand quickly with its small engine pieces, and sometimes if your opponent messes up, or even if they don't mess up and they're just a bit taxed on resources, it can pick something like a Cauldron Familiar out of the graveyard. Alongside and in addition to things like Elspeth's Nightmare, that might be the way that you ensure that their engine gets taken offline.
Ooh, maybe a slight misstep here. I think I like leading with the Witch's Oven in a post-board game, just because I know my opponent has Devout Decrees in their sideboard. It doesn't come back to bite him, though.
I agree. Even in a post-board game and also just on the draw, generally you want a Witch's Ovens first, because there's a lot of 2-mana exile effects that you open yourself up to if your Cauldron Familiar is played first. Whereas if you're on the play and you play your Cauldron Familiar, there's not much with 1 mana that your opponent can do to punish that. You're going to get Oven Cat out by the time they have any options.
Yeah, absolutely.
But as you said, didn't come into play this game. And, I mean, here's the dynamic duo we saw take the last game. 2 cats and an oven. Trail of Crumbs, an engine piece that we didn't see last game, but another of the great ones. This, if the game becomes grindy, will allow the Jun Food deck to keep up in card advantage with a deck. I mean, against a deck that's playing like Omen of the Sea and Thirst for Meaning. Trail of Crumbs can draw so many cards. Like 1 to 2 extra cards per turn if you have the mana. Like, it's crazy. Do you remember when Trail of Crumbs got added to Jun Food? At first, I thought that it was just like...
Yeah, I mean, everyone just kind of read that card the first time around and thought it was, a good limited card.
Because it wasn't even in Jun Food at first. People tried a Sultai version with Trail of Crumbs to sort of be an additional option instead of just Jun Food. And I thought, oh, maybe this is just like a joke, or like, not a joke, but maybe it's sort of a flash in the pan. Like it worked for one weekend because people didn't understand it. But no, this is the real deal. It got adopted into every food deck. Okay, so we've been talking about Brick Fingers because we can see their hand and we see that they have a lot going on. Hot X so far has just been sort of playing basics, drawing cards, setting up their hand. This Agonizing Remorse coming at a key time, picking off this Corvold before it can start generating value, because had that Corvold resolved, and there's 2 ovens and 2 cats in play.
Yeah, that Corvold would have got out of control immediately.
It would have just refilled the hand immediately. I mean, we were short a land to cast it, but still important to pick that off.
All right, these cats and these ovens doing work on Hot X's life total right now, already down to 11 points of life. It's going to be tough for them to get through this setup.
Yeah, we're just looking for some life game to buy time. But again, like the earliest I could see a Doom Foretold deck closing is once they have, it's 8 mana, right? To make 4/4s with Dance of the Manse?
Yes.
Yeah, like you need 8 mana to cobble together a real threat, and you only have 4 lands and you're taking 2 damage per turn. And even through Oath of Kaya, you're not really stopping that. You're just gaining 3 to stem the bleeding. And while your opponent is picking you out, they're drawing all these cards. So I feel like there's a large mountain here for Hot X to climb.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. It's going to, I mean, the Trail of Crumbs engine just going this whole game so far is just, it's just so hard to deal with, not only Cat Oven, but also with all this card advantage that Trail of Crumbs has been providing Brick Fingers. You're not fast enough as the Esper Doom Foretold deck to be able to compete with this kind of value.
You're definitely not fast enough when they have both pieces like this. If maybe they had a draw that was just Witch's Oven and Mayhem Devil but no Cat, or Cat Devil but no Oven, then you might be all right. But this is kind of, I think, how John wants to play this matchup. It was exactly the cards I said that were strong, and why I thought he probably didn't have to sideboard much was because they can do this, and
yep,
here he is doing it.
All right, Trail of Crumbs finds Corvold, Fade Cursed King.
Yeah, I mean, you try and Agonize Remorse it, and you just draw another one. Seems pretty easy.
Yeah, this might be all she wrote for Hot X. Hello's back and forth, and that's the good game. Brick Fingers takes the win in the quarterfinals, 2-0 win.
Yeah, had missed the 5th land drop there for a bit, and yeah, the engine was there, the writing was on the wall. The Corvold was just putting it over the top.
All right, let's see if I can get another one of our features we got going still.
All right, that's one of our quarters down. I don't know if any of the other quarters has finished yet. But we're looking for a backup match. All right, looks like we're going to be watching from the viewpoint of
Little
Bant.
X, the unversed, our undefeated player after the Swiss.
On Bant, you call it Bant ramp? Bant mid-range?
Bant mid-range.
Bant mid-range.
All right, let's get right into the action. Looks like we're hopping into game 2. Astro Yeti up a game. Teamer Clover versus Bant mid-range.
A bit of a slow draw here from Bant. Seems like we've had no acceleration, just playing out lands, trying to get to this Nissa. Our opponent hasn't let us use this Mystical Dispute, casting only Bone Crusher Giants and Lovestruck Beasts.
Mm-hmm.
And you just got to fire it off here. You haven't used it yet. Your next turns are sort of occupied.
Yeah, it's...
Although it is just getting a land, you might value saving this for something more important, letting your opponent have the land, because it's only a mana advantage that your Nissa is going to recoup.
Yeah, it's awkward, though, because as your opponent gets more lands, your Mystical Dispute gets worse.
That's also true.
Yeah, it's a weird one.
But I've also seen this Teamer Adventures deck kind of have a big flurry of a turn to finish. Like they will, use Fae of Wishes to cast Granted, then they'll get something, then they'll cast that, or they also have Expansion Explosions that they try and go get. So they can have some pretty big mana turns later in the game where Mystical Dispute will still have value.
All right, looks like we have a stomp. Going to the face.
Yeah, just aggroing
Little
out,
X down to 7 points of life.
punishing the slow start from this Bant deck by just throwing burn at the face and attacking with large creatures.
Yeah, Astro Yeti has no interest in interacting with that Nissa. They're just going face.
I mean, you're interacting with the Nissa by forcing these trades. Losing this 4-3 here with the land, leaving you with only a 1-1, may mean that your follow-up might not be able to tussle with the Dream Trawler. But if we play out this Lovestruck Beast, it can attack past Dream Trawler, so seems like we'll be all right.
Oh, petty theft. Nissa back to hand. This is real awkward now.
Yeah, just like a strong tempo game from the Teamer Adventure list. Playing out efficient, high power, 3-mana creatures. Balancing or attacking past any blocker. Yeah, now we're just on chump duty with the Dream Trawler.
I mean, he's really hoping there's no petty theft or anything for this Dream Trawler. Fae of Wishes. Granted.
I mean, we're tapped out. They have a 5-power creature. We're at 4. I feel like there's just going to be a fling.
Oh, there's a fling. And that ends LitX's sick run in the event. 6-0 in Swiss. Couldn't get by Astro Yeti in the quarterfinals. Sick run for him.
Kind of an unfortunate way to go after such an amazing run in the Swiss, but I mean, happens. The fall of our undefeated.
All right, so we have 2 semifinalists so far. Astro Yeti on Teamer Clover and Brickfingers on Jun Food. Still waiting for our other 2 quarterfinals to finish up.
And those 2 semifinalists will be paired. They are in the same half of the bracket, so one of the matchups in our semis will be Jun Food versus Teamer Adventures. Is that a match that you've cast yet?
It is not.
I don't actually know how that plays out. I'd have to think about it.
It's interesting because Jun Food is one of those decks that can, you have answers to a Clover in your main deck.
Mm-hmm.
And Mayhem Devil can, control the smaller board, can control the smaller creatures like 1 mana 1/1 draws a card with Adventures, Endwalling Keepers.
Endwalling Keeper.
So those don't reliably stick in the matchup.
Yeah, I feel like, that's a good point you bring up. The Jun Foods card advantage engines are harder for the Teamer Adventure deck to interact with. They can petty theft them, but then they just resolve again, and it's not super great petty thefting 1 and 2 mana things. Your Edgewall Innkeepers get pinged off by Mayhem Devils, your Brazen Borrowers get pinged off by Mayhem Devils, and your other threats, your Lovestruck Beasts and your Bone Crusher Giants, very easily get chump blocked by Cauldron Familiars, which then get sacked and brought back. So the way that Teamer Adventures won that match that we just saw, playing out these efficient 3-mana beaters, efficiently bouncing expensive cards with petty theft so that you have a time advantage, like a tempo advantage, doesn't work against Jund Food. So it might be that the matchup is good for Rugged Adventures, but I feel it'll have to be played in a different way, and we'll see if that works.
Just going to message a few of our players, see if the other semifinals are done, so we can get in for any action in our other quarterfinals.
I agree, person in chat. Corvold is so good. This Jund Food deck, like, has so many cards that I underestimated at first. Like Corvold, I just thought, when people started experimenting with it, I just thought, it's one of those commander cards. Like, it's probably not good because none of the other cards in that cycle are amazing. I talked about Trial of Crumbs. I underestimated that at first. Just a lot. It just goes to show you that, like, these quote-unquote bad cards can be pushed way over, like, stereotypical good cards, as there's a lot of synergy floating around.
Looks like one of our other quarterfinals have finished. So
waiting on one match.
Just waiting for the results to come in.
Yeah, I guess we can stick in some results here from our end. Oh, you didn't start the bracket. There should be a button somewhere. Are we not logged in?
No.
We are? Okay, you have to click settings. All right, if anyone wants a bit of a lesson on using Smash GG to be able to use any of the moderator powers on a page, you have to be under the settings version, which is a small button in the top left. But now you can click on brackets under reporting. Down. You should be able to go to top 8 and start bracket and then report matches.
Looks like one report there.
Just edit match. Report. All right, sweet. All right, yeah, we're just gathering our results from the last matches. The outstanding match, which is still playing. What are the decks that are...
Oh, looks like our other Jund Food player, Ugly Red, took a 2-1 win over Professor Chaos. And we're just waiting on the result of our Blue-Red Flash versus Bant Midrange in our last quarterfinal matchup.
So both food players that made top 8 have passed through the quarters. That's pretty impressive. I actually haven't played much of Jund Food myself. Like, it's not some... I've played a few matches on Arena, but the people who are doing well in these tournaments and the people who are doing well in, like Magic Invitationals and other big things consistently with Jund Food play so much of it, and they know every line. You even saw my inexperience when I was casting that game of Brick Fingers. I thought that he had missed lethal because I missed one of the other possible lethals. There's so many different orders and interactions and ways that you can sequence things in that deck that we're seeing the knowledge of pay off in these Jund Food players.
Yeah, absolutely. Not the easiest deck to play, a lot of lines. And, Jund Food, out of all of our most played decks in the field, having the best performance so far, 2 copies of the deck into the top 4. We have Ugly Red, returning champion of the first DWC Organizational, and Brick Fingers as well. Another local Ottawa player here on Jund Food. Teamer Clover, and then just waiting on that last matchup. It's going to be Jund Food versus either Bant Midrange or Blue-Red Flash.
And will that be our feature next?
We're going to feature Teamer Clover versus Jund Food.
I'm excited for that because I've not seen much of this sort of... it's not new kind of existed last format, but new to this format, Temur Clover deck. I haven't seen much of it in action, so I'm excited to cast it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have a favorite game you've cashed so far today?
Oh, favorite game. It has to be that last round with Hot X versus Lit X. That game 2 of that match was absolute. Game 1 and 2 were both really, really good. Really good. It was unfortunate to see it end in timeouts, but that's the way these events work. We have a chess clock for a reason, and unfortunately it didn't go the way of Hot X, but both players ended up making top 8. Both of them unfortunately falling in their quarterfinal matches. However, yeah, that game 2 though was just so swingy. So swingy back and forth. There was multiple points in the game where Adam and I were sitting here. It's like, oh yeah, this looks over. This is how this is going to play out, and we'll be on to the next round. And then all of a sudden, one shatter to the sky, and then it's back to anybody's game. Yeah, multiple points. It just looked like Lit X had the match completely wrapped up, and then Hot X found exactly what he needed to get back into it, and then Hot X ended up stealing that game.
Yeah, really impressive. I would have assumed that the things like Uro and Crisis would have just been too much raw card advantage as compared to the incidental card advantage of things like Doom Foretold. But it's not a typical Doom Foretold. It's an Esper Doom Foretold. It has its own raw card advantage in Thirst for Meaning and in Teferi and in Omen of the Sea. So, yeah, it makes sense that I guess they would just throw blows back and forth.
Yeah, all right. Let's...
Another sweet thing, someone clipped it when it happened, but I luckily was able to tune into the stream in time to see Brickfingers sack everything he owned to a Bantu to kill his opponent.
Dude, it happened twice.
Really?
2 times today when we tuned in to Brickfingers match just in time to watch him sack his entire board to a Bantu and kill his opponent.
That's the kind of showboating that I appreciate. Because if your opponent's at 3 and tapped out and you can get away with sacking 3 permanents, why? Just sack 12.
Yeah, it was hilarious to see both times we tune in. We're like, oh, this is really interesting. Oh my God, it's over.
People in the Discord were talking about it because at that point in the round, most of their matches had finished and people in the tournament were watching the stream. And they started commenting on this like sweet kill. And then Brickfingers came back to the Discord and he's like, yeah, I knew that it was about to happen. So I waited until I was on screen share and then I did it.
All right. And it looks like we've got our final quarterfinal wrapped up. Silvercoat taking the win 2-0 over Sterling. Bant midrange onto the semifinals. So we have Bant midrange versus Jun Food and Jun Food versus Temur Clover.
That blue-red flash deck looked sweet, and Sterling was playing great all day from what I could see and what I heard. So unfortunate to see it go down, but, unfortunate to see anybody go down at this point. All these players have done well all day, so thank you for coming out to the people who have lost in the quarters, and thank you for continuing to play for the people who are now in the semis. All right, it looks like Brickfingers is in his match. We're getting the stream started, as you can see. And here we are.
All right into the action. You love to see it, man. These events go by so quick. It's awesome.
The magic of Arena.
Yeah.
Arena
actually pretty good opener here for Brickfingers. Got 2 lands, an Oven and a Remorse, Trail of Crumbs, Thrashing Brontodon to deal with a Lucky Clover.
Yeah, we have an answer to the Clover. We have a Murderous Rider to answer maybe the first big threat. Trail of Crumbs to start digging. The only thing that I'm concerned about here is we don't have any of our sort of speed cards. We don't have speed cards, maybe a bad way to say. We don't have any of our primary damage dealing engine pieces. We don't have a Mayhem Devil to deal damage, and we don't have a Cauldron Familiar to go with this Witch's Oven to push damage. Mm-hmm. So it may be that this hand can grind out a lot of value, but it does it slow enough that even if we answer a Clover, Yeti just has a fast start and then starts, tripling or doubling some spells, and there we go. All
right, so it looks like Agonizing Remorse comes down for Brickfingers. Looking at a hand of Fae of Wishes, Beanstalk Giant, and Brazen Bull. We're going to take that Beanstalk Giant to keep his opponent from ramping out spells. Lucky Clover off the top.
It's going to go into this Thrashing Brontodon, though, but I agree with taking that Beanstalk Giant because the shape of our opponent's hand is a slower draw. They're probably going to want to use this I mean, the Fae of Wishes is just a slow card. It's kind of 6 mana. They all have kind of a lot of lands. The
Also,
Beanstalk Giant was also a land. So
notably, Astro Yeti doesn't have any red mana yet as well. So taking the Beanstalk Giant cuts them off of that as well.
I missed that, but very good point.
Oh, Beanstalk Giant off the top. Just the sickest rips for Astro Yeti. Lucky Clover into another Beanstalk Giant to double it up.
And now this slow hand isn't so slow because guess what? It's turn 6 already for Astro Yeti. And then we have the mana left over. Man, the fact that Beanstalk puts lands in untapped and you just double bounce things. Like, I was saying that Petty Theft may be not great against 1 and 2 mana cards, but if you're bouncing 2 to 3 of them, that's still pretty good.
Yeah. That was starting to look pretty good for Brickfingers, but those 2 top decks just have completely changed how this game looks.
Yeah, like Brickfinger's hand is still very good, but they're basically playing their turn 2 while our opponent's going into turn 6.
Mm-hmm.
This teamer deck looks sweet.
All right, that's another Beanstalk Giant off the top.
So now we're in Realm to cast the 7 mana backsides of Beanstalk Giants, which are going to be 7/7s and 8/8s. We can double Granted here to going set up for, whatever we want to do afterwards. I assume that you're getting Fling expansion here because you're going to have 2 huge Beanstalk Giants.
Oh, goes for Escape to the Wilds and Mystic Repeal. Gets that Trail of Crumbs out of here.
Interesting. So a slower line than I was playing for. And again, this is a mistake that I personally commonly make when I pick up a new list. I think of all the sweet things that deck can do, and I just try and do them as aggressively as I can. I'm like, I saw someone earlier expansion of Fling. I'm like, that would be lethal here. I got to do it. And I forget about I'm also wildly ahead. I can just keep burning them in cards.
Yeah, there's so many lines of play you can take with this Teamer Clover deck, and it, the players who have spent the time to learn the deck, put in the reps,
they know exactly what to wish for. They know exactly which resources they already have sufficient of, and so they then start solidifying other types of resources, whereas my line wanted to just use the only resource we had. Yeah, so I don't really know what there is to say about this game other than Yeti drew very well to pull very far ahead, and now Brickfingers is trying to develop and trying to assemble the power of the Jund Food deck, but is being sort of interrupted and thwarted in all steps of the game and is now counting their opponent's mana.
Yeah, Brickfingers found an untapped land off the top of their deck, so now they can get rid of that Edgewell Endkeeper if they so choose, casting the Mayhem Devil and sacking a food. It looks like that's what they're going to go for.
I guess you have to try and stem the bleeding so you don't have 0 chance of ever winning, but your opponent still has so many cards at their disposal. They still have things they can cast off of this Escape to the Wilds. 3 cards in hand to your 2. It's looking grim. How fast Astro Yeti chooses to close this game is up to them, but I'm trying to imagine a string of draws that saves Jund Food in this position, and I'm not sure I can come up with any. What are you thinking here?
So this game, I don't know. I think this game is a lot closer than you're giving it credit for right now. Yeah, there's an answer lined up to the first Beanstalk Giant in hand. It's really what this is going to come down to is if Brickfingers can find a way to stop these Beanstalk Giants from getting through. Like if Astro Yeti can't find a Granted to be able to just fling them at Brickfinger's face, we could be in for a bit of a longer game here. Yeah, really what Brickfinger needs is to find a Cauldron Familiar.
Yeah, I guess I was assuming that this 5/5 was going to start hitting, but we are at 16. Our opponent only has 1 effective power at the moment, and as you mentioned, there is an answer to the first Beanstalk Giant, and a Cauldron Familiar will check the second.
Yeah, and notably no 1/1s in play, so this Lovestruck Beast can't attack yet.
These Brazen Borrowers are going to hit us for a bit, but we have a Mayhem Devil to ping those off once we resolve it, so...
Oh, there's the 1/1.
Ooh, now we're...
This might be too much pressure now.
See, this is I agree with your point that Jund could have dug out of that. The problem is that it's so on a knife's edge, right? As soon as they get an attack like that in, I don't feel Jund has enough mana to keep up with the pressure that's already on board. Like, yes, we might be able to answer this, but then they're going to play something else out and we won't be able to answer that.
Now, looking at this now, I think this game is completely locked up. Beanstalk Giant comes down. You can pick up your Fae of Wishes end of turn, granted for a fling, and then that's it.
And like our answer to this Beanstalk Giant deals 2 to us, which puts us in range of everything else.
Mm-hmm.
This is a challenging position for Jund Food to be in, and I'm not sure if any of the options here are enough, let alone if there's a good one. Trying to think, you can Mayhem Devil, gain 3 to go to 10, but then you're stuck chumping a Beanstalk Giant. If you go to 5 to kill the Beanstalk Giant, then you have to stop everything. I mean, you could only let the 1/1s in.
Checking out Brickfinger's list right now. He has 2 Massacre Girls in the main deck, which could help stem the bleeding a little bit.
All right, so we play this Mayhem Devil. We have to jump the 5/5, sack it to ping a 3/1.
But they're
That's still 5.
Yeah, still coming through for lethal.
I guess if they pick up the Fae of Wishes now, it's not lethal. Maybe that was a bit of an oversight from Astro Yeti, considering that it would have been lethal had we not done that. Because now we can take 3.
I don't think he has quite enough mana to, granted for fling, cast the Beanstalk Giant and fling immediately. Unless there's an expansion explosion in their sideboard.
But our opponent's at 2. We can fling anything.
That's true. Yeah.
We can fling
true.
a Brazen Boar, we can fling a Love Strike Beast.
Yeah. For some reason, I'm like, yeah, you can only fling Beanstalk Giants because why would you ever fling anything else?
Go big or go home, you know?
All right. Astro Yeti takes a 1-0 lead in the semifinal match over Brickfingers. Let's see what Brickfinger decides to do in the sideboard. What do you like here?
I think I actually... So the first thing I noticed was Shifting Ceratops, which I think I like because, I mean, it can contest things like Lovestruck Beast and Bone Crusher Giant. It can trade with kind of the medium threats that the other deck has. But the reason that I like it is because it's able to stay on the board in order to contest those because it can't be Petty Theft. Mm-hmm. Like the real power that I saw from the Teamer deck in that game was a Clovered Petty Theft that set our Jund Food player back to turn 1 or 2. So I would consider Shifting Ceratops for that reason. Maybe it's still a bit too slow. Maybe trying to not get Petty Thefted with a 4-drop that trades with 3 drops is losing the fight anyway.
It looks like Brickfingers decided to bring in 2 Liliana Dreadhorde Generals.
Yeah, sideboarding very quickly. So I'm curious if this is a matchup that they have a lot of experience in and has played many times.
Honestly, I noticed he sideboarded out the Massacre Girls, and I think I actually really like them in this matchup.
Yeah, like that board that we were looking at, it would have got like
everything.
Everything, yeah.
Yeah.
But then again, there's other boards where like you're looking at, well, even like Lovestruck Beast boards, there's usually a 1/1 around. But I mean, I guess you could look at a board that has like the token from a Lovestruck Beast, Bone Crusher Giant, Beast, Beanstalk Giant, and there it does nothing. You're just playing a 5-mana 4/4. So it could be that what that board state we saw was exceptional and it's not actually good. And with the speed that Brickfingers sideboarded, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. And this is something they know.
All right, interesting decision here. If you want to get a Thrashing Brontodon into play or just hold up your food and Trail of Crumbs activation. Looks like we're going towards the latter. Lovestruck Beast coming down. Edgewell Innkeeper draws a card.
I don't mind playing for the food and a card because this Thrashing Brontodon, like if you play with this Thrashing Brontodon and it gets bounced, you're behind so much mana and you're unable to use it until you have 4 mana anyway. So I guess I don't mind this. Do you want a second Thrashing Brontodon? I guess
Brickfingers opts for the second copy of Trail of Crumbs.
So that's a decision that really suggests that Brickfingers believes they can win a long game. And I mean, I guess if your opponent hasn't, like there's no Clover yet, they haven't ramped, you have as much mana as them, which didn't quite happen the last game, then perhaps we're better set up in game 2 to play such a grindy game. And as I suggested, now finally playing out a Thrashing Brontodon that there's extra mana rather than focusing on Trail of Crumbs again. And it checks these 1/1s, so we're only taking 5.
All right, Lovestruck Beast comes in for 5, down to 13 for Brickfingers. Notably, no blue mana on Astro Yeti's side of the field yet.
Yeah, some mana issues on the Rug player's side of the board.
Bone Crusher Giant comes down, draws a card from Edgewall Innkeeper. We've got a pretty decent sized board right now for Astro Yeti. Might not even need the blue mana to be able to close this one out.
This Liliana, I guess, is still powerful in making 2/2s. My initial thought when I started that sentence was that the 1/1s on the other side of the board made the minus not great. But they're just 1/1s. If you just plus this Liliana, then it checks the 5/5 and the 4/3 while drawing cards.
Mm-hmm.
And with no blue mana, I don't know if there's an easy answer to a Liliana from the other side of the board. So, okay, do you trade here with this Thrashing Ronodon? I think you should. 9 damage is a lot. I don't feel you can go to 4, especially when you're hoping that this 6-drop resolves.
Yeah, I agree. Escape to the Wilds. Still no blue mana.
All right,
Found a couple.
So yeah, this Liliana gets to resolve, gets to make a zombie. The zombie will check the 5/5. If it's not interacted with, is that enough? We'll be going to 6 from the 1/1s if we get attacked all out. But we're at 11. We fact food. I forgot about that. Yeah, this is interesting. So now that our opponent has blue mana, we see that they have a second blue land and an Edgewall Innkeeper that they can cast next turn off this Escape to the Wilds. And still quite a few cards in hand. Really, the Teamer deck is so flexible that they can do anything next turn. I feel like we just have to make our most powerful play as Jund because there's too many options the Teamer could pull out next turn to try and play around all of them or think about all of them.
It looks like Brickfingers goes towards God Eternal Bond too.
That's surprising. I would have assumed that this Liliana would have been played to start trying to gain value that way, but...
Yep. Sacks Trail of Crumb, draws a card. Unfortunately, the last land he left untapped was not a black source to cast the Cauldron Familiar that he drew.
Indicating the frustration there by hovering over the...
Auto Tapper, just giving it to you.
Yeah, that's the one thing that Auto Tapper never gets right, is tapping for cards you could draw. And I mean, I guess there's no reason not to leave up the Overgrown Tomb there, because the only 2 cards you could draw that and also cast are Familiar and Goose. Witch's Oven doesn't matter, so a bit of a forgivable misstep there from Brickfingers.
Yeah, Brickfingers under a lot of pressure now. Breeding Pool comes into play untapped, Escape to the Wilds again.
That's so many cards on the other side of the table. And 2 Edgewall Innkeepers is representing even more cards. And yeah, so I guess had we played Liliana, it also would have been bounced and we would have just had a token. But now, none of our engines have really come together. We have Cauldron Familiar, but we have no Mayhem Devil, no Oven. We have Bontu that we could play, but we're at 5 and it can get attacked around. Really on the ropes here for the Jund Food deck. Never quite able to assemble a repeatable action other than Trail of Crumbs, but we were Trail of Crumbsing the hard way by paying 2 to sack food, so that's a bit slow compared to the efficiency with which the cards on the other side of the table have been playing together this game. All right, redeploying this Bontu that got bounced, we get to cycle a couple more things to try and find something that can keep up. Oh, choosing not to cycle anything. Wanting to maintain all the lands, just playing it out as a 5/6. I guess I like that. I would have been tempted to sack the Trail of Crumbs, considering that there's nothing that works with it at the moment. But I guess, again, playing towards a long game, assuming that we'll eventually be able to grind this deck out once we assemble things. But we're getting precariously close to dying to be playing for the long game, in my opinion. But
oh, there's the good game from Astro Yeti. Maybe this is it.
ooh, aggressive. Already pulling up the concede button, so we don't get to see what's happening. What could this be?
Yeah, it looks like a granted for the fling.
Yeah.
And that's it. Brickfingers' run comes to an end in the semifinals, taken down by Astro Yeti on Teamer Adventures.
The feature of both of those games, what really, really drove the Jund player into the dirt there, was multiple petty thefts. Game 1, it was multiple petty thefts because of a Lucky Clover, game 2. I think he just had 3 Brazen Borrowers throughout the course of that game. And just because the Jund player in game 2 didn't draw a large collection of their cheap pieces, they were casting more expensive things like God Eternal Bontu. Their options were Liliana. They didn't have, they were sort of big swingy things. They were just very easily getting bounced for 2 mana while everything else that the team or deck had played was chipping in. Petty Theft, the star of that match. All right, we're going into another Jund Food matchup, also against a blue deck, but rather than red, this player, Silvercoat, has white. We have Bant versus Jund Food in another one of our, the only other semifinal. Yeah.
Looks like we're still in game 1 too. This game's been going on for a while. Time Wipe coming down for Silvercoat.
I feel like the Jund player is going to ping down this Crisis here to stop it from being picked up. That's too much value to let your opponent have a second Crisis activation. And Time Wipe really only hitting Mayhem Devil here.
Yeah, you get to get in for a bunch of Mayhem Devil triggers with your Witch's Oven in play before this Time Wipe goes off.
Yeah, you get a bunch of extra damage here, and looking at the hands of both players, because it looks like the Jund player cast an Agonizing Remorse at one point. We have information on...
Ooh, there's a Corvold off the top of this deck. I think we're just in time to watch this match end.
Yeah, and we have information on our opponent's hand. This Elspeth Conquers Death is probably fine, but maybe a bit slow considering the setup that Jund Food already has. And we have a Liliana to answer this Dream Trawler if that's what they go for. And I agree with you. I feel like there's enough of an engine assembled and enough answers for the opposing hand, Brontodons even for the Elspeth Conquers Death, that this one won't be much longer.
All right, Grazer gets picked up by the Time Wipe, comes back down. Little wall in the way of this Cauldron Familiar.
Yeah, kinda. It's still just cycles.
This Corvold's going to draw a lot of cards right now.
Yes, it is. Interesting to continue focusing on Trail of Crumbs activations here, which I assume this is, rather than playing up the Corvold.
Mm-hmm.
I
guess he just doesn't want to play it into the Elspeth Conquers Death.
Yeah, I guess if you assume that you're just looking for a Mayhem Devil here to win immediately and to win without allowing your opponent to untap and opening yourself up to Elspeth Conquers Death, and there's the Mayhem Devil.
That's the Mayhem Devil.
And so this gives us exactly lethal?
It's enough, yeah. You have the Fabled Passage
as well. Yeah, the Fabled Passage as well. So it's 3 from cycling this Cauldron Familiar. The Fabled Passage is an additional 1. And then you have 2 mana left to activate a food for the last point. So I believe this is exact. Yeah, so again, Ugly Red demonstrating their proficiency with this deck, knowing not to focus on the cards in their hand, knowing that this Trail of Crumb engine can dig to something that can win immediately rather than playing out Corvold, which likely wins next turn.
Ooh. Didn't hold priority to sack that other food. So we're 1 point short.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or also accidentally paid 1 on a Trail of Crumbs activation that they didn't need to, and so didn't have enough mana to crack the other food.
Also correct.
All right, so lethal was missed briefly. Let's see if it comes back to haunt Ugly Red. I don't think it will. Is there any immediate life gain effects?
There's Uro.
Uro could put our opponent to 5, potentially. Oh, Crisis, what we just saw.
Crisis X equals 5. It's only going to gain 2 life. They're still dead on board. Yeah,
and a concession from Silvercoat. They know it. Both players realized that there was a misclick there to give the game one more turn, but it didn't end up delaying, or it only ended up delaying the inevitable. All right, a bit of a stalled image here as we wait for...
We'll hop over to the desk while that gets figured out.
Yeah, I think we're just waiting for Ugly Red's computer to load into sideboarding. I think that's the place where my arena lags the most, is transitioning from a game into sideboarding.
Yeah. Yeah, mine too. I'm sure everybody's does.
Let us know in chat if that's where your arena gets hung up the most. But like starting arena for the first time loading into new games is usually fine, but trying to get out of a game into sideboarding, it just panics.
Yeah. All right, what do you like out of the sideboard here for this matchup?
Against Bant,
I'm getting that Casualties of War into my deck.
yes, the Casualties of War looks great considering that they have planeswalkers and creatures and enchantments, and they also have lands.
Correct.
Things like Epic Downfall for tagging Uros, I think, is important because you want to, like, if your plan is to play a grindy game and the sort of Trail of Crumbs focused game plan of Jund, you need to stop them from doing a similar thing with recurring Uro over and over. So just getting it permanently out of graveyards, I think, is important.
Mm-hmm. I don't think I like Duress in this matchup. I wouldn't side that card in. Agonizing Remorse is an interesting one too. I might cut a few of those. I
feel like Agonizing Remorse tags Uros out of the graveyard though. Like the same reason I was saying I like Epic Downfall, it's better at.
Yeah, well, I'm saying I would trim on them in favor of the Lilianas that we're bringing in.
Oh, if we're trimming,
and yeah, I like it over Duress. I don't think I'd bring Duress in at all in this matchup.
So what are you hoping to Duress? You're hoping to Duress to Fairies and Elspeth Conquers Death? Maybe you think they're going into like more board wipe focused?
Yeah, I don't think I'm not really sure that's how we want to play this game. Like, this Casualties of War is going to be in my deck. Get it out of my sideboard. I can't even watch. Don't hit done. Oh no.
Although I like the Lilianas because we have an answer to Dream Trawler.
Yeah, Liliana I like as well, but that Casualties of War, you best believe I was bringing that one in.
Yeah, notably, there were Wildborn Preservers in the sideboard, which didn't come in. I have heard people talking about Wildborn Preserver being a check to Dream Trawler. Even people going so far as to play 4 main, saying that it's very good in this deck. And it has a lot of gameplay with other parts of the deck, but not being brought in for that reason here. Or maybe they feel that Ugly Red feels that they have enough answers otherwise. Or maybe they feel that it's just not as important of a card out of ban.
All right. Silvercoat mulls to 6. Ugly Red keeps their 7. Starts off with a Gilded Goose on turn 1. No turn 2 play for Silvercoat. Maybe a Growth Spiral on end step. Let's see what happens.
Do you Agonize Your Remorse early here, or do you take this chance to... Okay, yeah, playing Mayhem Devil I don't agree with, because then you've lost your food. You sort of don't need it yet. You have nothing to really trigger it off of. And with 2 Agonizing Remorses, I guess, yeah, I agree with casting one here. You have another one that you can hang on to for when you really need to push through something threatening. This gives you information about how their hand is going to play out, so you can line up yours.
All right, a preemptive good game in response to Agonizing Remorse. Looking at a hand of Island Forest, ECD, Teferi Time Graveler, and Hydroid Krasis. Notably, no white mana in this hand.
Yeah, no white mana, so that Elspeth Conquers Death is a ways off. That Teferi probably also not getting cast. Hydroid Krasis, there's no ramp in this hand, so it's not going to be huge anytime soon. Kind of a really clunky, awkward draw. And I mean, I understand keeping a hand like this, because if you find white mana in time, your Teferi can kind of bridge the gap. And it was already 6. You don't really want to go to 5 and have a hand with potentially more issues. But an unfortunate starting collection of cards for Silvercoat.
Now, there's that Hallowed Fountain off the top. Great pick of that Teferi Time Raveler.
Yeah, dude, they always draw it.
All right, let's see what Ugly Red gets up to on their next turn. Looks like we're getting a Mayhem Devil, sacrificing the last food remaining.
So deploying Mayhem Devil, deploying this Cauldron Familiar as well. We have kind of everything we need except any way to sack permanents. And
yeah, you love to see it getting in, sending a message with that Gilded Goose.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be a misplay if you did.
Oh, man.
And the appropriate response. So, as things stand, Jund Food only has 3 mana. This Agonizing Remorse is going to pick off another card, but if past this Agonizing Remorse, the Bant deck can cobble together another white source and like a Shatter the Sky, Jund has no way to recover from a Wrath at this point. Like, everything's just creatures on the board with no other pieces of their deck, of their engine. So
free attack in here for the Cauldron Familiar, as that Krasis can't jump in front of it, or it's just going to lose to the Familiar coming back when a Goose makes a food.
Yeah, that's another thing we've been seeing Ugly Red do all day, is they know exactly when Cauldron Familiar is unblockable. and they take advantage of it.
All right, Gilded Goose makes a food, and the other Gilded Goose immediately is going to use that food for mana so we can cast this Agonizing Remorse.
Yeah, if you don't do that, you don't have enough mana left over to make
that
a food
Elspeth
anyway.
Conquers Death.
This is a free damage.
3 lands in hand.
But this is kind of exactly what... I don't want to say what Bant needs, but having an extra white source and then being able to top deck into a Wrath that doesn't get Agonizing Remorse because it was cast there is, I think, the way that Bant can steal this game back. All right, Trail of Crumbs is...
That's a nice one.
It is a nice one. It's one of the types of cards that Jund Food was missing. And so if he can string together enough draws of things like Trail and Oven, then I think Jund will get into a position that they can't really be knocked out of. But they're still soft to a Wrath at the moment. Not as soft because the Cauldron Familiar comes back, but still soft.
All right, Growth Spiral off the top for Silvercoat. See if they can find something to try and stabilize this board.
They have a lot of lands now. They've sort of fully developed their mana as they flood. I mean, as you expect would happen.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of any draw now is live for Silvercoat. A Nissa will stabilize this board. An Uro can dig them into a card and gain them some life. Another Hydroid Krasis would be amazing.
Sacks a food to make a food. Gets a Mayhem Devil trigger.
Yeah, just pushing the damage.
Mm-hmm.
Even an Elspeth Conquers Death. I mean, I say even because only one permanent is the target, but picking this Mayhem Devil off takes a lot of the power out of Jund's board state. And again, soft on lands.
All right, another Trail of Crumbs off the top for Ugly Red. Going straight to combat, going to be getting in with this Familiar and the Mayhem Devil.
So I suspect that one of these Gilded Goose post-combat is going to eat a food to make a mana to pay for Trail of Crumbs in order to look for lands. And then, if that doesn't work, this Trail of Crumbs will be played, and the other Goose will do the same thing.
All right, looks like that's what we're going for. Mayhem Devil triggers, knocking Silvercoat down to 5. Oh, maybe not. Maybe we're going to
This
go
is
to
a
the
hard
Hydroid
choice.
Crisis.
But with your opponent so low, and you having pings on the board kind of just as you play your next few turns, because these Gilded Goose are sort of 3 mana, 1 damage, which if your opponent breaks for too long and you get some like one more combat step, that's enough. So I agree with not targeting the 2/2 here. And in addition, like outside of a time wipe, this 2/2 is not that threatening. Or some other way to pick it up, like a Teferi.
Mm-hmm. All right, Ugly Red decides they want to play around a sweeper effect, decides to not to deploy the Mayhem Devil. Just gets the second Trail of Crumbs out of the board, makes a food, and we're shipping it back to Silvercoat. Onus is on them now. They have to find some way to deal with this board or they're going to be dead next turn.
I think it's free to play around the sweeper there. Like your Mayhem Devil will trigger as soon as you cast it the next turn. You just sack a food to a Goose and do some stuff. So not opening yourself up there makes sense to me.
Preemptive good game for Silvercoat. Is this actually it?
Is it the bluff good game? To make like your opponent go for it when you actually have something.
I have a hard time thinking of what he could have at instant speed, but
yeah, I mean, I agree.
There's the Witch's Oven. If it wasn't already over, it looks like it's very over now.
Jund is getting 2 cards here. Yeah, and there's the
and
concession.
that's it.
So an awkward mulligan into a lot of lands from Silvercoat, while Jund was able to push damage with creatures and pick the rest off with some triggers. Not like a great showing. Like neither deck there played its A+ game, but Jund brought like a B, while the other deck, kind of failed. So sometimes that's how Magic goes. Congrats to the Jund Food player, played that match well.
Ugly Red go back to the finals yet again for a second time. No stranger to the finals here at the DWC Organizational.
It took a bit of a break at the last Organizational, but back at it.
Mm-hmm. And this is basically a rematch from our other semifinal, Jund Food, Teamer Clover. We saw Clover walk all over Food in the other semifinal match. It'll be very exciting to see if it plays out the exact same way.
Is there any significant difference between the two Jund food lists from the one we watched last time?
Let's take a quick look.
So Ugly Red has 3 Crashing Brontodons main, which I think are maybe some of the most important pieces. All right, so 3 Thrashing Brontodon is important for Ugly Red. Only 1 Murderous Rider to deal with large Beanstalk Giants. And 2 Massacre Girls main, which, as we mentioned, could clean up those sort of Brazen Borrower, Edgewall Innkeeper board states. And Agonizing Remorse as well, which might be able to disrupt cards like Clover or be able to take these adventure creatures before they're able to use both halves. Although awkwardly, Agonizing Remorse doesn't deal with a lot of these cards once they're in exile on adventure. And because the adventures are generally pretty cheap, I feel like a lot of the teamer's hand ends up in exile pretty quickly where they then cast it out of. And so if these Agonizing Remorse aren't right on time, they might feel dead. I guess they could, like if the teamer player sort of cast granted in advance to get some stuff out of their sideboard, then that's susceptible to Agonizing Remorse for a turn or two. But I think it sounds in paper like it lines up awkwardly to me. I guess we'll see. And as I was silent there for a bit, if you're watching the stream, Alex is just setting up another giveaway for sleeves on Arena. So we have another code to give away for those, and the giveaway will be starting shortly. There'll be a post in Twitch chat when that starts. And I guess it's going to start before you hear this because we're on a 5-minute delay. So at some point, you'll be informed about it. All right, so we're just getting that set up. Do you mind tabbing over to the other Jund food deck?
All right, Arena Code Giveaway 2 is live. ! Raffle in chat to enter for your chance to win an Arena Code for sleeves, courtesy of wizardtower.com. Sponsor the show. Let's hop over to the booth while we wait for our finals match to get underway. We've got Astro Yeti, Teamer Clover facing up against Ugly Red, Jund Food. So I know we've already seen Jund Food fall to...
And it fell hard.
Do you have a favorite for this match? What are you thinking?
I mean, from the one match I've watched of these decks, it looks like Teamer's going to take it. I mean, if there are as many Brazen Borrowers as there were in that last matchup, and they just kind of continue to reset the engine that Jund tries to assemble while also having enough mana from things like Beanstalk Giants and even Escape to the Wild, letting you play 2 lands per turn. If they have enough mana to cast things like Petty Theft and play a threat, and then Jund has to use its subsequent turn to replay whatever got Petty Theft, then that's what we saw in the last games. Teamer just had an additional extra things on board because of this tempo advantage and ran them over. So,
all right, we're right into the finals.
I don't know if Petty Theft is the only way that they can do this, but I feel like if there are as many Petty Thefts, then this goes to Teamer. If there aren't, then I'm going to learn if Teamer has other ways to approach this matchup.
All right, if you didn't know already, our raffle has started for our final MTG Arena Code !raffle in chat to get yourself in.
This hand, I think, is actually pretty good from Jund, considering what I said about Agonizing Remorse. You want it early to tag important pieces before they end up in exile off these adventure creatures. It could even tag, because our opponent played a tap land first, it could even tag like a Vital Edgewall Innkeeper here.
Ooh, not the hand you want to see on the other side of the table with your Agonizing Remorse. 2 Innkeepers and 2 Lucky Clovers.
Yeah, this one's rough. I guess. I wonder how you want to approach this. You have to try and disrupt the clovers, right? Yeah, so it takes one of the clovers because they will just make every future draw so powerful. So you have to disrupt that. And then I guess our hope here is to draw something like a Witch's Oven so that this Mayhem Devil can pick off these Edgewall Innkeepers before they stick around and get too many triggers.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Mayhem Devil here makes sense. Worst case scenario, we get to sack something in 2 turns with Korvold. But even here, Astro Yeti understanding that these Edgewall Innkeepers are fragile in the face of a Mayhem Devil and casting Lovestruck Beast first before the other Edgewall Innkeeper, before the Lucky Clover, before even the Heart's Desire, just to get the card. I like that play. Ooh, this is, I guess you...
Finds another Remorse on top. Interesting decision here if you want to just get the other Lucky Clover. I think you just have to go for the other Lucky Clover.
I feel like, yeah, you got to stick with your plan of like, take the Lucky Clover because you don't really have any other way to reliably answer it. And you already have answers on board to Edgewall Innkeepers if things come together.
Yeah, I mean, you're a Witch's Oven away from being able to completely contain Yeti's board.
And for instance, let's say we take an Edgewall Innkeeper there. Okay, so Edgewall Innkeeper is actually off because if you take an Edgewall Innkeeper, they just have a good turn regardless. So it was between
the Clover and the Lovestruck Beast.
I could have seen an argument for taking the Lovestruck Beast so that they don't get an Innkeeper trigger immediately. But I also understand playing towards the long game. I like this trade here since you don't have any way to use this cat otherwise, and these Innkeepers are going to bury you. But that Brazen Borrower, as I said, like it's step 1 to this teamer deck. Like they get to play out all these things now safely because the Mayhem Devil was bounced, and it takes mana to redeploy that Mayhem Devil, which means you're not also deploying things to get triggers off the Mayhem Devil in the same turn.
All right, Korvold comes down, sacrifice the forest, draw a card. You know, this is a pretty big wall in the way. Lovestruck Beast still coming across the table, though. 5 points of damage. Ugly Red down to 7.
And this is risky because, okay, so we have no way to sacrifice anything other than a Korvold attack. And if we do attack with Korvold, it leaves us wide open to this Brazen Borrower that's going to be flashed in. We then are stuck chumping Lovestruck Beast. But our opponent also has a guaranteed 2 cards here. As soon as we try and do anything to interact with these Innkeepers, they flash in Brazen Borrower. So we kind of want to attack with this Korvold so that it eventually gets big enough to check the Lovestruck Beast and picks off an Innkeeper, but we also don't because then we're taking damage. But I think that ultimately, despite both of these being kind of bad options, you have to attack because the resources that we have at the moment aren't enough to beat what our opponent is showing us. So even if it loses, you have to cycle for something else because what we currently have definitely loses.
All right, Brazen Borrower is flashed in response to the Korvold coming in, drawing 2 cards for Astro Yeti.
And I mean, I guess there's a world where if we survive this next turn, we being Ugly Red, if Ugly Red survives this next turn and they draw into something like Oven, then they get to play a second Mayhem Devil, play Oven, attack with Korvold, sack things, bring back Cat, sack some more stuff, and maybe this Korvold just gets across the finish line for lethal. It takes
that's a stomp to the face.
Ooh. And so now
that's it.
We're dead.
It's over.
Yep. That was
that extra point of life off the Agonizing Remorse. All right, Ugly Red down. Loses game 1. Astro Yeti up a game. Man, that was
Yeah, I mean, I kind of want to contribute it to Petty Theft again. Like, had that Devil stayed on the board when the Korvold resolved, then one of those Edgewall Innkeepers wouldn't have stuck around. There wouldn't have been as many cards. They might not have found the Stomp. And with Mayhem Devil being sort of the most expensive piece of the Jun Food puzzle, it's arguably the best thing to Petty Theft. And with Jun Food not having much going on, it's the ideal time to Petty Theft it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dude, it's going into sideboarding, like I said.
This is stressing me out. All right, we made it to sideboard MTG Arena. Thank you. All right, what do we have here? It looks like Brickfingers is moving the Disfigures into the deck.
That makes sense. Just a more reliable way to pick off early Edgewall Innkeepers. I like the Wildborn Preservers as well. Like, you get clocked. They trade with these flyers in the air. They stop Fae of Wishes. They trade with, or just eat Brazen Borrowers.
Yeah, a much cleaner sideboard plan here. I like bringing in the casualties. We're leaving the Massacre Girls in the main deck, which we noticed that Brickfingers didn't do in the other semifinal match.
Yeah, so it's a bit of disagreement between our Jund Food players, but for the reasons you've mentioned, I agree with leaving it in. Interestingly, Noxious Grasp is staying in, which only hits... Like, what do you Noxious Grasp? I guess it's...
Hits Innkeeper, hits Lovestruck Beast,
Beast.
hits Giants.
Beanstalk Giant as well, yeah.
Those are your targets.
I guess the rest you can kind of eventually deal with. The blue creatures and the red creatures.
Yeah.
All right, so a one-lander, unkeepable. This hand, rough. Like, just a cat is probably the weakest one piece you could have. Yeah, also ships it back to another one-lander. These are some really unfortunate draws here for Ugly Red in Game 2. But it's a one-lander with Goose, Oven, and Trail. So
you have most of the engine already.
Yeah, you have most of the engine already, and you have 2 mana. So as long as you draw into lands, then this Trail can find other lands. And you have a sideboard card. Unfortunately,
Mayhem Devil off the top's not what you wanted to see there.
It's not what you wanted to see, but we can cast Trail of Crumbs, which replaces this food, and then the next turn we can use it to dig for lands. Really, we're just looking to draw lands here. We want like another 2 or 3 lands.
Ooh, stomp on the Gilded Goose. Uncastable off the top.
Now, stomp on a Gilded Goose is something you do regardless, I would imagine, but it's even more backbreaking here when your opponent misses a land drop.
Yeah, this is a very, very rough start for Ugly Red. Astro Yeti just doing what he's been doing all tournament.
Yep. It's these stomps and these petty thefts just resetting the initial development of Jund, so that whatever Rugged Adventures does on turns 3 and 4 sets them up to bury their opponent for the rest of the game.
All right, we have Fae of Wishes, Granted Side, doubling up. Looks like Yeti's going for a Sorceress Spyglass and a Mystical Appeal. Oh, that's not what you want to see off the top of the deck for Ugly Red. Casualties of War.
Yeah, feels bad boarding that in a matchup where it would be great, and then being nowhere near 6 mana.
Repeal sends that Trail of Crumbs to the bottom of the library, and I imagine this Spyglass is naming Witch's Oven.
This has just been a complete disassembly of the Jund Food deck.
You hate to see your tournament end like this.
Oh yeah. I mean, okay, so Jund was going to lose this anyway because they're stuck on 1 land. But let's imagine that Jund had a reasonable draw here. Stomping the Goose, Sorcerer Spyglassing the Witch's Oven, Mystic repealing the Trail of Crumbs. Like, every axis along which Jund attacks has been delayed or stopped. And that's actually pretty impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like we're granting again. Domri's Ambush, Escape to the Wilds. Yeah, we're in garbage time.
Yeah, there's just so many resources on the other side of the table, and
another uncastable off the top of the deck for Ugly Red.
He's sticking it in there. Might as well. It's the last game of the last match of the tournament, so in some wild land that you come out of this, you might as well stick around. There's no reason to concede here, other than that you're almost certainly losing. But
no reason to concede except your time.
yeah, it's just your time. And if you want to mourn the loss of your tournament in such an unfortunate fashion, I understand.
Find a Blood Crypt off the top. Nice from Ugly Red.
Yeah,
happy to see.
Right on.
Happy to see
you're
that
just looking
second
for
land.
lands. Astro Yeti saying hello to the newly arrived Blood Crypt. Welcome to the battlefield.
All right, Wildborn Preserver getting flashed in. I don't think a York go from Ugly. Ugly Red.
What do you got? I got a 2-2.
Gust sends that Preserver packing. 6 points of damage coming across the table.
All right, we're at 2. Is there a stomp?
There's that stomp, and that's over.
We could have been at 4.
And that spells the end for Ugly Red, but we have a new champion.
No repeats today. Astro
DWC
Yeti,
Organizational.
newly crowned champion of the DWC Organizational 3. Grinding past a number of Jund Food decks, grinding past Bant decks, getting past Mono Red, getting through our wildly diverse field that we had to emerge victorious with Teamer Adventures. Kind of a recent breakout deck. Recent, maybe like it existed in previous formats, but recent return to standard archetype. And it looks like we're lining them up for a winner's interview.
Yeah, let's see if we can get Yeti on the call here.
All right, they are able to do an interview, so we're going to start calling them. Hello, Astro Yeti. Can you hear us?
Yep, I'm here.
Congrats on your win, man. Champion of the 3rd DWC Organizational. How does it feel?
Oh, it feels great. Appreciate it a lot. Glad I could have played today.
Yeah, thanks for coming in, man. You ran the tables with Teamer Clover, or one copy of the deck that made it into top 8. How was your run with the deck today? How'd you do in the Swiss? How'd the deck feel?
Oh, the deck felt great. I started off really rough. Had the first game against Rakdos Knights, and that deck just tears apart Teamer Clover.
Oh.
There's very little you can do, even with a perfect start, to go up against Registar. So took that first game loss, or match loss rather.
Mm-hmm.
But then after that, it was just these like really tight plays against some Rakdos Sacrifice, a couple of like UW decks that really came down to just the last turn, where I was able to get out a Beanstalk and fling it to the face for the like necessary damage. So it was fun. It felt really great, but it was a couple like bad plays away from not making top 8.
Hey man, I mean, Teamer Clover is one of those decks that really rewards players who put in the time to learn it and put in those reps. And you could tell from watching your matches, we didn't get to watch any from your side of the table, but it looked like you knew what was going on at every point of the game. And you had your way with those 2 food decks in the semis and the finals. Man, those matches did not feel close.
Got very lucky with that last game. I feel really bad for my opponent, Ugly Red, getting stuck on one land for just turn after turn. It's going to be hard to come back. But
yeah, that's an unfortunate
I've been playing this deck since Eldraine, so it's kind of like my baby at this point. I love it.
It is an Eldraine block constructed deck. I wanted to ask, because you did play against Jund Food twice in the top 8 and possibly also in the Swiss, and despite that last game being a bit unfortunate with only one land, in the games where you actually played against Jund Food, it seemed like you absolutely tore them apart, whether it was through petty thefts, resetting the things they tried to deploy, or even in that last game I was commenting, let's say your opponent had lands, you had Mystic Repealed, a Trail of Crumbs, you had Sorcerer Spyglass, Witch's Oven, you had stomped and bounced everything else, and it felt like you just were able to completely stop everything Jund ever wanted to do. Is it that good of a matchup, or were those exceptional games?
No, I would say that those are definitely outliers. I've played a lot of matchups at like Friday Night Magic against some good Jund players, and man, if they get an engine going, you feel like you've already lost the game. So it was just having the right cards at the right time to get a couple stomps down on a Mayhem Devil, or to blow up their plan, essentially being the control deck. And then switching into that aggro role when you recognize, all right, I'm ahead on board state, let me just start swinging in, because if they get a cat down with an oven, you're just not going to be making any damage compared to them.
Yeah, that makes sense, having to play out your adventure creatures as creatures in order to get in before they can start jumping.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, man, just wanted to give you one more congrats for taking down the 3rd DWC Organizational. It was a pleasure to have you play in our tournament. We'll let you go for now, and then we'll work out getting you your prize. You've won a box of Theros Beyond Death, so congratulations again. It was a fun day.
Thank you.
Thanks for playing in the event. Do you have any shout-outs to say before we let you go?
I definitely want to shout out my girlfriend, just because I play a lot of Magic and she puts up with me. I want to shout out my buddies, for playing Magic with me and introducing me. to the game. And then lastly, to this guy, Aaron Gertler, he pioneered the Teamer Adventure deck, and he plays it better than anybody. So without him, I wouldn't be playing it. So
awesome.
Thanks, guys, to you guys as well. Appreciate you guys putting on the tournament.
Yeah, I just want to give a brief apology that the box of Theros you won won't contain any cards for your Teamer Adventure deck, considering it's all Eldarin constructed. But...
yeah, that's true. That's true. But it's that wish board.
Yeah, you're right. They put anything in there.
All right, man. Thank you so much. Again, we're going to let you go. Congratulations to Astro Yeti for taking down the entire event, our champion here at the DWC Organizational. And thank you all for tuning in. It was a really exciting day. Thanks for joining us all the way along. We love to do this stuff. If you haven't heard of our podcast before, we are the Disorganized Wizards Club podcast. We have a weekly show that is sponsored here by wizardstower.com. If you're a Canadian Magic player, you should check out wizardtower.com, your place for Magic signals. We have great events here in Ottawa. Really happy to have them on as a sponsor. Be on the lookout for the next DWC Organizational, which will be coming to you after the release of Ikoria,
Layer of Behemoths. Yeah, we usually do one organizational per set release. This was our one for Theros Beyond Death, so Ikoria is going to be the next one. We try to get in kind of early on Standard when things are still creative and people are brewing if we can, so keep an eye out.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Thank you again for tuning in, everybody. If you want to check out the cast, you can find us on Twitter at DWC Podcast 1. We're also on Facebook, the Disorganized Wizards Club Podcast. And if you want to support us in the show, we're also on Patreon, patreon.com/Disorganized Wizards Club. We have a bunch of tier benefits, custom tokens, our DWC Discord, which everyone has been in for the event. It's a great community we fostered. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And we'll see you guys next time around. Be on the lookout for more streams for us, weekly streams, playing some Arena, playing Pioneer. We'll be here. We'll be around. And I guess thank you to Wizards for hosting us on their main Twitch channel for the event today. It was really awesome to see.
Yeah, it was really exciting. Yeah, thanks again to, first and foremost, everyone who came out to play. Secondly, everyone who viewed and watched the organizational. You guys really gave us something to run these events for. So thank you all.
Yeah, it was awesome. This is us at the DWC signing out for the third DWC Organizational. Congratulations again, Astro Yeti, Teamer Clover, taking down the entire event. And we'll see you all next time.